Here is the English version, rewritten in a cinematic documentary voiceover style, suitable to be given directly to an AI video generator. It keeps a serious historical tone, slow pacing, and dramatic narration, like high-quality YouTube documentaries. At the beginning of the 21st century, Syria appeared to be a country that knew its destiny. Power was firmly held. Institutions functioned on the surface. And in the year 2000, authority passed smoothly from father to son. Bashar al-Assad, a young ophthalmologist, unexpectedly became president after the death of Hafez al-Assad, inheriting a state shaped by decades of centralized control, security dominance, and carefully balanced regional alliances. In the early years, there was talk of reform. Brief hopes emerged, fueled by cautious discussions of openness and modernization. But those hopes faded quickly. The system returned to its familiar structure: tight control, limited dissent, and a leadership that appeared resilient. For many observers, the Syrian state seemed weakened at times, but never truly close to collapse. Everything changed in 2011. Protests began in the southern city of Dara, small at first, local and limited in their demands. But the response was swift and forceful. Within weeks, demonstrations spread across the country. Streets turned into confrontation zones, and the uprising evolved into an armed conflict. What began as protests soon became a civil war, then a regional battlefield, and eventually an international arena. Multiple forces entered the scene. Armed factions, extremist groups, foreign militias, and global powers all became involved. Iran expanded its influence. Russia intervened militarily. The United States established a presence. Israel conducted repeated airstrikes. Meanwhile, cities were destroyed, entire neighborhoods emptied, and millions of Syrians were displaced or forced into exile. Throughout this devastation, Bashar al-Assad remained present in official discourse. He appeared occasionally in speeches, speaking of resilience, sovereignty, and victory. Yet his appearances grew less frequent, his presence more distant, as the country sank deeper into economic collapse and international isolation. In 2013, the chemical attack in eastern Ghouta shocked the world. Accusations escalated. Global tensions reached a breaking point. For a moment, it seemed as though the system might fall. But an international agreement diffused the crisis, preserving the balance and delaying any decisive outcome. Then in 2015, Russia intervened directly. The military balance shifted once again. Government forces regained territory. The narrative changed. The war appeared, at least militarily, to be moving toward an end. But beneath the surface, the cost was immense: crippled infrastructure, crushing sanctions, a collapsing currency, and a society exhausted by years of war. Life grew harsher. Poverty expanded. Electricity and food became daily struggles. Airstrikes became routine news. And yet, the leadership remained largely silent, operating from behind layers of security and ambiguity. Then something unusual began to happen. There was no coup. No assassination. No dramatic announcement. There was only absence. Public appearances stopped. New photographs ceased to appear. Scheduled speeches never came. At first, the silence seemed temporary, perhaps a security measure, perhaps a strategic withdrawal from the spotlight. But days turned into weeks. Weeks into months. And the absence deepened. Not only did the president disappear from public view, but so did his family. His wife, his children, and figures closely associated with the ruling inner circle vanished entirely from the visible landscape. No confirmed sightings. No official statements. No clear explanations. State media avoided the subject. There were no denials, no confirmations, only vague references to institutional continuity and national stability. The flag remained. The government continued to function. There was no declaration of transition. Yet the figure at the top was no longer visible. Outside the country, speculation exploded. Some spoke of secret international agreements, negotiated behind closed doors. Others suggested overwhelming pressure had forced a silent withdrawal, a calculated decision to preserve the structure of the state without the burden of its most visible symbol. There were theories of deception, of temporary disappearance, of an eventual return. But time passed. And there was no return. No image, no voice, no final address. The absence became permanent. In this imagined historical moment, the disappearance did not mark a loud ending, but a quiet one. No statues fell on camera. No palace gates were stormed. Instead, power dissolved into silence, leaving behind a nation still standing, but fundamentally altered. The state remained. Institutions endured. But the ruling lineage faded into uncertainty. And so this story entered memory not as a dramatic collapse, but as an unresolved mystery. A reminder that power, no matter how absolute it appears, can vanish without spectacle. That history does not always announce its endings with noise. Sometimes it closes its chapters in silence, leaving only questions, echoes, and the unsettling weight of what is no longer there.